podcast, The Jenna and Tosh Show. I'm Tosh Taylor.
And I'm Jenna Morton, and we have another fantastic guest with us this week, someone who is new to the show, and we are just, so excited to hear all the stories that Damon has to share with us. Damon Levine is joining us from New Brunswick Black History Society. Hello and welcome.
Jenna and Tosh, how are you today?
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, absolutely.
I have to admit that I've basically spent my hour before we hopped on this call reading things off the website and going down rabbit holes from the Facebook group, and already this morning have discovered so many more fantastic stories than I knew previously about some of the fantastic people in the Black community in New Brunswick. And I'm just so grateful and so excited for you to share with us about your organization and about some of the work you guys have been doing lately.
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me. I guess I'll start off by saying that this being Black History Month, we have quite a few things going on. The first of which I definitely want to promote, is we have a speaker series which has been going on since last Friday, and basically what we've done is we've brought in various speakers from around the province who will give free interactive online talks, which means that they present something and you can ask questions of them, and they're presenting topics ranging from Black loyalist history, the Willow Grove settlement, which is a Black settlement here in St. John, outside of St. John. Personal uplift. We had the poet Clyde Ray come on last Friday and do poetry reading. Yesterday we had David Peters talk about the founding of Pruitt and the Black community in St. John before that and after that. So it's just fascinating collection of stories and facts from people around the province, related to Black history. Both we have some historians who'll be talking about Black loyalists who. From reading our website, you probably learned that Black loyalists were the African American slaves who agreed to fight for the British in the Revolutionary War. They were evacuated to Canada. So we have Stephen Davidson who'll be talking about that a little later in the month. So just a lot of fascinating stuff going on with our speaker series. In addition, we have had the Canada Post has dedicated a stamp, or created a stamp commemorating the Black refugees to the Willow Grove settlement in the early 19th century around St. John. We had an unveiling for that last Friday, which was really quite beautiful, because in addition to having a lot of our local politicians and the mayor there, we also had quite a few of the Willow Grove residents who are now quite old. But I guess that was a prominent Black refugee settlement, from the early 19th century, well up until the mid 20th century. So just fascinating stuff, really, New Brunswick history-wise.
And that's something that both Tosh and I really do have a passion for, having neither of us grew up here. Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of spend our time now trying to find out as much as we can about this place we've decided to call home. And I have to say that in the past, I found it a little bit difficult to easily find some of these stories. And I feel like all of a sudden, there are so many fantastic stories that are popping up that your organization is sharing. And to have the stamp, I think it is part of that. It's so prominent and so wonderful to have that coming out into everyone's, consciousness and talking about, the history there.
You're absolutely right, Jenna. And I'll tell you, just based on what I've learned, is that there's been a lot of people in this province, in the Black community especially, doing work to, how should I say, put these stories out there about New Brunswick's Black community, really about the maritime Black community, because it is quite fascinating. But they've been working at this for decades. There are people here in the St. John area who are related to the New Brunswick Black History Society, like Ralph Thomas, David Peters, Peter Little, Mary Louise McCarthy Brandt, Graham Nickerson. and plenty of other people who are related to the History Society who've just been doing a lot of work over the years to bring these stories out. Because you've read on our site, there's a lot of Black history, Black maritime history, Black New Brunswick history that people would have known at the time, but over time it kind of fades away, right? And then it's not part of the public record anymore. Well, these people have been working for decades. Like in the case of like Ralph and David Peters, 6 decades since the 1960s to bring this stuff forward and make it more prominent. And I think they definitely deserve credit for doing that, because now we have the website and we have the society. People can go see these stories, much like you have, and sort of become informed. I should add, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I'll just add this one more thing. In addition to all these people who've been doing this great work over the last 6 decades here in New Brunswick's Black community, we have just a lot of really fascinating young people also doing brilliant work. There's the Black in the Maritimes podcast, which if you have not heard it, you really need to hear it. It is brilliant. It's called Black in the Maritimes. Google it. They also put out a video every few weeks or so. And there's also Black Lives Matter in Brunswick, and also the other various Black Lives Matter organizations all over the province, which are doing phenomenal things for New Brunswick's Black community, as well as preserving or bringing forth the stories of Black New Brunswickers in the past and preserving that history. So I highly recommend checking them out as well.
I find that in this province, it's really history doesn't seem to be important. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of get that feel like when you're looking for information, it is kind of hard to find. So I can imagine how much harder it would be for you to find it as well. Now, that makes me want to hear some like really cool stories. Like off the top of your head, Damon, what is like your favorite historical event?
Well, I am glad you asked me this, Taylor. So I actually have a book of the stamps here that commemorate the Black refugees to New Brunswick. And bear with me just one moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
The woman here on the stamp is actually named Eliza Diggs Taylor. Okay.
Cool.
Black refugee from the United States, flee slavery, early 1900s. So 2 weeks ago, we get an email from a woman in Massachusetts saying that she heard that Canada Post has released a stamp, and the woman on that stamp is her relative. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. That's amazing, right? So I contact her. Yeah, it turns out she says her family in Massachusetts has done all of the research on the family, has heard about this woman, but just couldn't get information out of Canada on her, right? Like they've done all the research. Eliza Diggs Taylor was this woman's great grandmother, right? So they knew that, and that particular woman had somehow moved to New England, right? And so the family became an American family, like Black American family, a Black Boston family. But they were always curious about this Canadian relative. Well, I put her in touch with Ralph Thomas from the New Brunswick Black History Society, who of course had the Canada side of things, had the New Brunswick side of things, and he's just rattling off all these names. So it's amazing. So they got in touch with each other, and he told her all about her family, but on the Canada side, which just made her so happy. And of course, that's one of the things we like to do here at the New Brunswick Black History Society, right? We like to make those connections, because as you've probably read on our website, Black refugees, Black loyalists, basically, the first large Black communities in Canada, in the Maritimes, were former African-American slaves who either got here by the Underground Railroad or fought for the British against the Americans in the Revolutionary War, and were brought here by the Brits. So those bonds are there. And as you can hear in my accent, I'm not a Maritime. I'm a Pennsylvanian. But we learned about those Blacks when I was in grade school, and I've always been curious about to me, that other side, like, wow, whatever happened to those blacks? I mean, obviously, I live around them now, but those bonds are still there, and I feel it's really good to strengthen those bonds. Like a lot of us wouldn't know, a lot of Black Americans wouldn't know their relatives that got taken to Canada. That those ties are long gone. Likewise, a lot of Black Canadians, Black Maritimers wouldn't know anything about the U.S. side of their families just because of the nature of slavery. And they had to get out. It wasn't safe down there back then. So I find that stuff very fascinating, and
it's so powerful, and it's so important. I think it's part of what always draws me to history and to those stories is you start to realize just how connected we all are. And, as you're talking, I'm thinking too about, the Acadians in New Brunswick, who of course have huge, family ties with Creole communities. And,
yes.
and they've worked hard to try to reestablish some of those connections. And it's, my family was Scottish, and it's the same thing. The Scots who didn't land in the Maritimes landed down in North Carolina. And there's so many different ways that we're all connected, that the more that we remind ourselves of those and strengthen those ties, the more we're all going to understand each other now.
That's a great point, Jenna. And it's interesting you say that. So I tend to live my life, especially here now that I'm in Canada, kind of like getting rid of the border. I see similarities on both sides of the border. I see family names that are prominent in this part of New Brunswick are also prominent in Maine. Namely the name Darling, and you may or may not know it, but Mayor Don Darling is the mayor of St. John. But if you go to Bangor, there are also quite a lot of Darlings there. So obviously, from the same seed, they just branched off somehow. I see this all over the place. Just like you said, the Scots in the U.S. South. It's just the Scots-Irish. The Brits put the Scots-Irish all over the Americas, the Maritimes, the South, Appalachia. Same people. Just different countries. It really is fascinating.
I want to know what brought you here, like what brought you to St. John specifically, and what your connection is. How are you loving it so far in your work with the society?
Yeah, thanks, Tosh. So, like a lot of come from ways, my relationship brought me here. I met my partner when I was living and working in New York City back in about 10 years ago now, and we dated long distance for a brief period. Then she lived with me in New York City, and after she lived with me and got a master's down there, she came back, and it was really up to me to decide what to do. Would I like her to move down to the States, or do I want to move here? So I decided to move here.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I've always been. I'm much like I believe you, Tosh. I am I'm a former journalist. Now you're a broadcaster. I'm a former journalist. Have a degree in journalism and worked in newspapers many years ago. So I've always had an interest in history, things like that. So just coming here and kind of living the history that I was taught in grade school fascinates me. So this relates to how I like my time in St. John. I quite like it. And I talked to a lot of St. Johners, Maritimers in general, who will always say things like, "Oh, you lived in New York City." I'm from Philadelphia, by the way, but "Oh, you lived in New York City, and you're from Philly. Like, you must find this like so slow." And I'm like, I really don't. First off, I like the city that St. John is. Like, St. John's a small city. It's comfortable to me. Like, I know what city living is like. So that's not a problem. And wilderness is literally 3 minutes away. So.
Yeah, and it's a fun city. It's such a historic city. Like St.
Yeah,
John,
it is,
just like it oozes out of it.
It absolutely does, and that I like to. Being from Philadelphia, like that's also quite old. These are all British cities, right? So I get it in that respect. I definitely get it in that respect.
Jenna had sent me this morning the story of Georgina, like the Ice Queen of St. John.
Yeah, Georgina Whetsel. Yeah,
that's how I'm naming her now.
She's
the
like my
Ice
new
Queen of St. John.
hero.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
I'm reading through it and the article and how like she dominated the city and the ice market, which is unbelievable. But like that she lived on Prince William and I'm like, oh my God, like it's so cool when you can read stories like that and been like, I've walked on that street, I've walked past that building. I've
Exactly.
like that's really, I love that.
Well, it's so interesting you mentioned that, Tosh. So, poet and playwright Clyde Ray is putting on a production here in St. John called We Were Here, which basically it's several actors. I'm actually one of them, and we're all playing different St. John Black figures from Black history here in New Brunswick, and one of our actresses is playing Georgina Whetsel. So I know her story through that as well. But this play is going to highlight a lot of those people that we're talking about. So Georgina Whetsel, the Ice Lady, Abraham Beverly Walker, Canada's first Black lawyer, who had his office in a bar here in a building which now houses a very popular bar here on Princess Street.
That sounds like what a lawyer would have done. Then I'm just going to set up in the bar.
Good one. I like that lawyer humor. I play the runner. He's a runner and a man of so many other talents, called Eldridge Eatman, who's born in St. John. Was this phenomenal runner. He stowed away on a boat to Britain in the early part of the 20th century, and then managed to win a bunch of titles over there. But not only that, he was a musician as well. So he made his living when he wasn't running races and winning titles in Britain. He made his living as a musician in Britain, and he also served in World War I. With the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers as its only Black non-commissioned officer. The guy was in the trenches for like 2 years. This is a St. John dude, right?
Crazy.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Now, and back to your point, Jenna, and again, if I'm monopolizing the conversation, please shut me up.
No, that's the point.
But back to your point, Jenna, you talked about how we're all intertwined. So in this region, there are a lot of Eatmans, like E-A-T-O-N or E-A-T-M-A-N, but there are a lot of Eatmans. Now, Eldridge was Black, right? So Black Eatmans. My partner said, I've never met a white Eatman. And me personally, I've never met a Black Eatman, which is so weird, right? But somehow or another, the Black Eatmans and the white Eatmans are definitely combined as families in this part of the world. There is a singer here in St. John who is white, named Austin Eatman, who freely acknowledges that Eldridge is one of his relatives, which is fascinating.
Extremely.
Fantastic. I absolutely love. I had seen just this morning about this We Were Here production that is coming, and I love the concept, and I love that it's available online for people, and we'll make sure that we put all those the links and everything in, because there's still time to get your tickets to watch it. But I absolutely love how it's focusing in on people and stories, because that's what most of us can relate to and what most of us will remember and take away. Some of us have that head for history and we like the facts and the figures and the dates, but for most people, it's that connection to a story that sticks with you and helps you understand people and place. And so I'm so excited to hear about this project and to buy my ticket after this.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. I think you're really going to enjoy it. We're putting together some great stuff with this particular project from Clyde Ray. All of the figures that are on, not all of them, but quite a few of them that are on the profiled on our website, the New Brunswick Black History website, are featured in this play. There's some really impressive people. There really are. Cornelius Sparrow, again, another former Black American slave that made his way here, via Underground Railroad, and then opened up a business, and a pretty prominent business back in the late 19th century. Who else am I thinking about? Constance Timberlake, who's a St. Johner, who moved to the States and was very active in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. And then I think she died in 2019, but she was quite a prominent educator. I believe she taught at university down there in the U.S. So really, really quite a prominent St. Johner. So just a fascinating stories, and really well worth it. I believe it happens. It's going to be streaming on February 25th, 26th, and 27th. Due to COVID restrictions, it was going to be a longer run, an in-person run from the 23rd to the 27th, but due to COVID restrictions, right now it's streaming from the 25th to the 27th of February. However, if we get word, we're still waiting, and things go back into yellow, hopefully, it could very well be the 23rd. Right now, it's solidly 25th to 27th and streaming.
That's
It's fantastic because that's accessible to everyone, not just New Brunswickers. Because I think it's going to be a powerful piece, I think.
Yeah, or St. Johners for that matter, right? So that's very cool. Okay, Damon, unfortunately, we do have to wrap up the show today. But before we do, I want to know, what else can people find? Like, if they're looking for information, what else can they find on the website?
Yeah, so Tosh, what we like to do at the website is offer people any kind of genealogical any help with any kind of genealogical work they're doing, particularly as it relates to Black New Brunswick. Now, I need to stipulate here that this doesn't mean we do the work for people making the inquiry, and I put that on the website as well. But if you've done quite a bit of work on your family line, we have people on staff who will help you, point you in the right direction, and perhaps they know somebody in your family line that can help you with that. So we'll help you with your research, provided that you've done the lion's share of it. Okay. So it's something we like to offer.
Like those little connections, right? When you're missing that, like, oh, there's something there.
Exactly. And one final thing I'd like to say about the New Brunswick Black History Society is that we have a networking page which has Black-owned businesses on it, which we highly recommend people check out, just to kind of support Black-owned businesses in New Brunswick, and just help each other get ahead. I should say that I'm skipping around here. We have two speakers, which I think you really like for your podcast. Now, one of them is no stranger to you. On Monday, February 23rd at 6 p.m., we're going to have Lynch as part of our speaker series. And you'll know her as the owner of Sankara, the catering business. You've had her on your podcast. Lily is, she's doing big things. And she's going to be talking about her family. And the story is called The Herstory of Black Loyalists, Remembering Rose Fortune. Now, Rose Fortune, does that name sound familiar to you?
No.
Now, Tosh, you shook your head yes.
I did, but I don't know why it's familiar. So can you inform us? Yeah.
So Rose Fortune is known as Canada's first Black female law enforcer, but really what she was, she's a Black woman who was born to escaped slave parents in the United States, who managed to find her way here to Canada and opened up a cartage business on the wharf, I believe, Annapolis Royal in Nova Scotia, and made quite a living for herself. She's also the namesake of the St. John to Digby ferry.
There it is. Yeah.
Rose Fortune.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of the boat now. Fundy Rose.
There, yeah, there it
That's
is.
her namesake. Yeah. And I am honored to say that Rose Fortune was born in my hometown of Philadelphia, in what was then the province of Pennsylvania when it was still British.
All these connections, eh? Like, oh, it's crazy. It's
That's
crazy.
Right.
It's crazy. Okay, so what are the? Sorry to cut you off. What are the links to the website and social media that people can follow?
Yeah, exactly. I would highly recommend people become connected to the New Brunswick Black History Society by its Facebook presence. So just go, type in New Brunswick Black History Society. We have a website, which is nbblackhistorysociety.org. That's all one word, nbblackhistorysociety.org. And also, I would highly recommend people look into the social service organization in St. John called PRUDE, which is that's the organization I work for also, and it's a social service organization dedicated to sort of multicultural education and various newcomer programs. It was started by and for St. John's Black community about 4 years ago, and is expanded to cover all aspects of inclusion and uplift for newcomers, women, racialized people. It's quite a good organization. The website is prudeinc.org.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. And Jenna will have everything in the show notes for all of our listeners who want to click on any of that information. Damon, it has been such an educational time with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Tosh and Jenna, really, thanks for having me. This has been great. Enjoy myself.